This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today is Dr. Troy Page, founder of Cambridge Online Education. Welcome to the show.
Uh, Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great to have you here. First of all, let's talk a little bit about how education may have evolved, but not everyone's quite caught up. What is it about how schools teach that you feel is outdated?
Well, quite a lot, really. I've written a whole book about it. And obviously, the online world has changed things quite a lot. And also, the pandemic has really brought into sharp focus how outdated schools are. I mean, even before the pandemic, lots of people realized that actually schools have been around for a rather long time, 150 years plus, and they haven't really changed that much. So, you're still sitting 30 kids in a classroom, you've got one teacher trying to teach everybody, you've still got a board. It's barely changed. And when you think in that 150 years how much everything else has changed, it is rather odd that education hasn't changed, especially bearing in mind how important it is. We need to leverage education to prepare our young people for the future ahead. And it's an uncertain future. Everybody's seems to be throwing in their ideas about what the future is going to be like. AI is upon us. It's changing things at incredible speed. It's threatening everybody's jobs, and we've got robots coming our way. So the traditional kind of situation where if you don't do so well at school, well, you'll always have some job to go to. That's not looking quite as certain, is it, as it used to be? So I think what we need to do now is we need to accept that the model is outdated. It needs a big shake up, and there needs to be some serious time spent looking at genuine alternatives. So I said about I mentioned the pandemic, and the pandemic gave everybody an opportunity, willingly or unwillingly, to face online education. And to many people's surprises, despite the fact that the teachers were totally unprepared, everybody was unprepared, nobody had got any training, and yet many parents felt that their child was making better progress at home with a teacher who was unprepared and not used to the online environment at all, than when they were going to the school. So it made people think, maybe there's something in that. Maybe actually all the distractions in a classroom, maybe the quality of the audio visual being so much better in an online class, maybe the fact that the teacher actually can control the class, because if a child isn't paying attention, is causing problems, they just switch them off. Give them fair warning, and if they're not going to play ball, off they go. So suddenly children were making progress. And also the social anxiety that is rife in classrooms today, um, within an online environment, and it being so controlled, and children having the ability to switch off as well, because that's important. If they're overwhelmed by the situation, a good online school will say, okay, this isn't the right moment. You're never going to learn when you're feeling that way. Take a time out, come back when you're ready, and we'll take it on board from that point on. So it's a much more civilized environment from that point of view. Now, it might seem that I'm advocating for the sort of cessation of schools per se, but I'm not. I'm a massive advocate of schools. I just want them to work.
There's an interesting phrase that I'm reading here, which is this idea of a zombie apocalypse with children in
Yes.
schools, and obviously that brings up kind of the genre of the kind of the zombie movie. When you talk about a zombie apocalypse and how technology and AI could be the antidote to that, where do you see school children heading in the absence of some kind of change?
Well, it's already happening. I mean, it might be a bit of a shock, but nearly a quarter of children don't go to school anymore. According to the Centre for Social Justice, there's been a 70% increase in children not going to school regularly. That's to give that some numbers, that's 1.54 million children are persistently absent from school. They're voting out. I don't want it anymore. It isn't working for me. I'd rather do something else. And I think that's really, really powerful. It's sending a clear signal, I think, to educators and to the world in general that children have had enough, families have had enough. They've tasted it during the pandemic. They've tasted an alternative, and they know now that they can do better with an alternative. Now, the zombie thing. I mean, obviously, I'm using the zombie thing because it's a useful device. Let's be clear, but it is true. After decades in the classroom of me trying to be, I don't know, Jack D or something, at the front of the classroom, doing my 5 sets a day, trying to entertain children, keep them engaged. And they are a tough crowd, I can tell you. It takes some pleasing. They take some pleasing, and quite rightly so. It's really tough because these kids have got education coming their way and in the way that they want it delivered. So if they want to find out about Henry VIII, they'll find out about Henry VIII, and they'll find it in forms that I can't deliver in a classroom. So they'll get it as an animation, they'll get it as an immersive experience, they'll get it as a PDF, they'll get it as a YouTube video. They can download it in the quality that they want and in the form that they want. And that's important, in the form that they want as an individual. Everybody is a consumer, everybody consumes in their own way. And if you really want somebody to learn well, you have to respect that difference. And schools have never done that. I mean, there's a lot of talk that goes on, but you've still got one teacher, 30 children, and all the children are being treated pretty much as one homogenous group. It's never going to work. It's hardly ever worked. I mean, the statistics, I mean, I did a doctorate in education. When I looked at the statistics, over 2/3 of people have always left school without what they need. So
It,
what do they need? They need to feel confident. They need to have self-esteem. They need a system that recognizes their talents. They need to be prepared for the world of work. They need to be prepared to take their place within society as a responsible citizen. Our schools don't prepare people for that.
mm.
And I'd argue they barely ever did. Um,
There is a function, I think, of babysitting or kind
oh
of
gosh.
being, kind of restricted by certain curriculum requirements and those kind of things. I love to learn. I just don't like to learn in a classroom. So I've learned Portuguese on a gaming app like Duolingo, and I've learned lots of things on podcasts and YouTube videos. If I had to do the same things in a classroom, I don't think I would have that knowledge. How do you see technology can help, particularly kids?
Well, I've already said that it delivers the content, the education in a way, in a form that is digestible and entertaining and interesting and exciting and engaging. I mean, this is the trick. How do you do that in a classroom situation? It's a challenge. So you get every child in a position where they can consume the topics that are required. So if we have a national curriculum that says you have to learn about particular things, all I'm saying is let's get the technology in there rather than getting Mr. Murphy at the front of the chalkboard. Well, it's not a chalkboard anymore, thank God. It's a little bit better. It's a sort of flickery whiteboard, with sun blazing across it, and you can barely see half of what's going on because heads are jumping up and down in front of you, and the sound quality is not good. So yeah, so you give everybody a tablet, you give them access to computers, you give them headphones, you give them quiet places where they can actually consume that content. You give them the ability to move around a school, so you don't pin them to a chair like they're some kind of convict, and you don't strangle their enthusiasm and stifle their creativity. Um, and call them naughty and give them a diagnosis of ADHD if they don't conform to, a zombie, which is let's just sit there with your arms out front and just sort of, wait to be fed something in a really passive, silly way. We need active learners. And the funny thing is, these zombies, they're all zombies at school. They walk around, and they look half dead and, they're not engaging and they just wish they weren't there. Their faces are a picture. You can see it. How many faces, if you just look down a corridor in a classroom, a corridor in a school, and you look at their faces, if you gave it to AI to recognize the emotion on those faces, the statistics would be appalling. You think, my God, these people don't want to be here. It's quite clear. They're not engaged in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of them are just trying to avoid getting bullied, quite frankly. It's a scary, noisy, inhospitable environment. So you need to get the environment right. You need to get the tech in the hands of the kids, because the tech is actually in the schools, which is really frustrating, but it's all tucked away in cupboards and or in IT suites. I mean, what do you want an IT suite for? Every class should have technology in it. It should be in the hands of the people who know it best, i.e. the kids, okay? Because half the teachers haven't got a clue in terms of technology. It's not their fault. It's just, well, maybe it is their fault. Maybe they need to upskill themselves, and realize it. But you see, within the environment of the school, it's not required. You're still being, what is required for a teacher? Turn up, get the textbook out, turn people to page 41, okay? Put some objectives on the board, okay? Do a bit of Q&A if you can get the kids involved, which is not easy. Set them a few tasks, set them a homework task and send them home. And that's another thing that really bothers me, is that after a whole day of sitting in classes, not being engaged, trying to avoid being bullied, they then are sent home with a whole load of homework to do, which is essentially the work they didn't get done in the lesson. So they've done a whole shift at school, and then they've got to go home in their own personal time, which is supposed to be a relief. And talk about work-life balance. There's a lot said about it. We need a work-life balance, and I can wholeheartedly agree. We all need a work-life balance. They go home and then they have to start school effectively. That's the bit where they do all the work. And as a teacher, I found the best work that was achieved by kids was done at home, which is ridiculous. It should be, the best work should be done at school. And I start my book by saying, look, imagine you as an adult, you go to a job and you spend all day just listening to different bosses. And then at the end of the day, they say, well, you better go and do some work now. So you have to go home and you have to do all the work that you should have done all day. It's that kind of situation. Whereas technology, what technology does, apart from delivering everything in the mode that the children want it, is it's individualized. Like your Duolingo. Duolingo knows exactly where your strengths, your weaknesses are, how your engagement. You go on that 20-day streak. You're not going to let that go, are you? Not for anything. So it's a very powerful device. Technology is fashioned to optimize engagement. So why not harness that? We hear a lot about these dodgy algorithms and the problems that are caused by that. But in the case of Duolingo, that same technology is actually benefiting the student. It benefits you with your language learning. It can benefit lots and lots of students. And if we get it right at school, it means that we don't have to send kids home with loads of homework, because they've done a lot of work at school. And kids are sitting in classrooms thinking, why am I listening to you, sir? When I could actually, I'm going to find out more about this lesson during break time than I am through the entire lesson.
It,
It's
it,
all
it,
backwards.
it does seem weird. I was reading a book by Naval Ravikant, I think, and he said, right,
Mm.
you should find like the best maths teacher in the world, and then
Mm.
that person should do it for everyone, rather than lots of
Yeah.
mediocre maths teachers all fragmented in different schools. Lots of them aren't particularly motivated or interested, and I think there is an opportunity to really change it. What is stopping progress within the education system? What's keeping it in the status quo, which clearly isn't working?
Well, I think it's a perception from ministers. Now, ministers are bean counters, right? Quite rightly so. It's public money. You can't go wasting public money. And for forever, the cheapest way of delivering a mass education system is the way that we all know and perhaps don't love anymore, with a quarter of kids not going anymore. So what they need to understand is that technology, just like in every other sector, is actually a way of reducing cost, not increasing it. And the technology has already been bought. We've already got the technology in schools. They're absolutely packed to the rafters with technology. It's just not being used. So the investment has already been made by the public. All we need is to shake things up and say, look, let's leverage the technology that we've already got. Let's understand the model doesn't work anymore. Okay, let's believe the data rather than trying to sweep it under the carpet and ignore it. and say, okay, 150 years of doing the same thing and it never working very well in the past, and now faced with the option of having much better modes of learning, and the technology being there, and facing a very uncertain future, we really need to harness technology, leverage technology, so that children can be prepared for the future. So sitting a child down with a screen with the equivalent of Duolingo, yeah, and many other forms. I mean, an AI can provide so much more feedback to a student that is specifically targeting their specific individual need. That why are we not doing that when every other sector in the world is clamoring for it? They are putting all of their budget into how do we use AI to steal a march on the competition? Why? How can we optimize every aspect of our business? We're going to use AI. Schools, no. And I think it's that perception from ministers that it's going to cost too much. And my argument is it isn't. It really isn't. You've just said it. If as Ravikant says, if you get the best maths teacher, that's one person. Okay, you pay them handsomely, you get them to produce the best content possible, and then you deliver that through a network of screens at school, because I do believe kids should go to school. Okay, the function of society is such that people need. Well, that is assuming AI doesn't take everybody's job and people do still have somewhere to go. Then parents need to have the freedom to be able to do that. So the kids need to go somewhere, and kids need to be socialized. And there's so many other things that teachers can do. And I think you're right. I think teachers need to stop thinking that they are Jack D on the stage. So the sage on the stage model needs to go. Okay. What we now need is somebody sitting beside the student and supporting their learning. But the actual delivery can come through in many, many, many forms that are perfect for the individual student. It's tailored for the individual student. I mean, yesterday I was commenting on Radio London, BBC Radio London, about that appalling situation in a school in London where the kids were being bounced off the walls. Special educational needs kids were being bounced off the walls. Don't know whether you've seen the video, the footage. It's absolutely appalling. That school is struggling. I sympathise with the school. It's so easy to just bash the schools and say, well, it's not good enough. Well, okay, let's equip the schools. Let's make the schools aware and make everybody aware and make the schools aware that there's an alternative. You don't have to have a so-called calming cell, calming room, which is effectively a padded cell. You don't need that. What you need is you need to engage children at where they are, meet the child's needs where they are. And this is another thing I say in the book about age. Why do we actually have children going to school in year groups? I've never understood it. Why is it that a 13-year-old has to go into that year and the 14-year-old has to go in that year? It doesn't make any sense. Somebody's age has got nothing to do with their personal needs, their abilities, what they know and what they don't know. It makes no sense. It only makes sense for a mass system that's trying to save money. And which tells you straight away that the education system was never designed for the needs of the child. It was designed for the needs of the system, i.e., save money, get children through the system. And it sort of worked in a way because somebody's got to do all of those jobs that don't require an A grade. There's lots of work to be done, manual work, physical work. But now the robots are coming. Now AI is coming. What are we going to do with all these kids? So we need to find everybody's individual talent. We need to really nurture that. And technology can absolutely do that. And it can do it for a fraction of the cost of what we're currently doing. And what we're currently doing at huge, huge cost. The government's talking about pumping billions into this education system. I say don't. I say if you're going, or at least don't do it in the way that it is at the moment. It's a bucket with lots and lots of holes in it, and all you're going to end up is with more. All you're going to end up with is more zombies going into a world that doesn't need them. It doesn't need a zombie. It needs a creative, engaged, excited person with self-esteem. Because that's the other thing. People are leaving with no self-esteem. They've been basically abused by the system, battered by the system. If they're no good with academics, they're no good. That's 2/3 of kids. 2/3 of kids are not academic.
No,
just the way it is.
it is a scary situation because it does seem like it's a big oil tanker that would take a very long time to move and change, and you've got unions that would kind of fight changes because they would fear unemployment and those kind of things. So it's a difficult problem to solve, but it's great that you're, flying the flag for change because I think it's absolutely needed. You've made reference to your book and obviously your company, Cambridge Online Education. If people are curious to learn more about you, your book, or Cambridge Online Education, where can they go for more information?
Well, we're all over the internet. We spent 20 years developing online schools, online education. So there's cambridgeonlineeducation.com. That's probably an easy place to start. And then we've got Cambridge Homeschool Online. We've got the Queen's School. We've got loads of different things. We've got an online College of Art and Design. My background is in creative education, which is a very tough thing to do online, but hugely successful. We've got thousands and thousands of creatives into the creative industries, which incidentally are booming. So if you've got a child at home that's creative and artistic, um, whereas the school system will write you off as being sort of second rate, the world doesn't. The world wants you. The world wants creativity because one thing AI is going to struggle with, yes, it can make pictures, yes, it can, but it's using algorithms to do that. But it'll always need a human person, a human, to add that finishing touch. And the very best creatives will always be in demand. Uh, if you're mediocre, AI will take your job. But if you're not mediocre, and you've got something about you that's really, really special, you will always have a job. There'll always be a need for you. So this is what schools should be doing, and this is what we're doing within Cambridge Online Education. And look, one thing I really want to be clear about is that online education outside of a school is not what I'm advocating for everyone. As for most people, that isn't the way forwards, right? It really isn't, because as I said before, um, I think that society needs schools. So I definitely don't want to see the demise of schools. I don't want to see the end of schools. I don't want to see everybody at home with a computer screen all day, every day. I don't want to see that, even though my business actually is offering that, but it offers it to particular people. So we screen the people that come in. We look for people for whom that works. We're not taking just anybody. What I want a situation where for the majority of people for whom that won't work or isn't appropriate, I want them to be able to go to a school. I want them to be able to go to a school, and I want them to have access to technology, and I want it to be a level playing field insofar as that access is there. Because that's one of the problems with the homework. You see, you send children away from a school where they haven't done very much to do homework. Some kids have got great tech at home. Other kids really don't. So there's a digital divide there. Um, and that's not acceptable when all the technology is already in the school. So my argument is in the book, I just say, look, the first hour or two of a school day is a complete waste of time. Okay, never in the field of human endeavor has so much money been spent to deliver so little. Sounds a bit Churchillian, but that's basically the situation. We've got loads of kids going into school, literally like zombies. My daughter, for example, she's great at school, but the first hour or two of the day, forget it. You can barely get a sentence out of her. And after teaching it for decades in schools, no one's doing much in the morning. Right? They're not doing much in the afternoon, but in the morning, it's shocking. So my argument is, if you want to set homework for kids, just say to them, look, go and have your evening, spend your time with your family. That's important. Recharge those batteries, have some fun with your family. Come back in the morning, and that first hour in the school, or 2 hours, depending on what kind of kids you've got turning up at your school, because they are different as well, you see, different people from different environments, different locations in the country, are more engaged or less engaged in education per se. They're not by some parts of the country are not buying in to the whole school system. They don't see the value of it. Other parts of the country and society are buying in. So those kids tend to turn up a little bit more engaged in the morning. But for those who don't turn up in the mornings, let's have period one for doing the so-called homework. But it's not homework anymore. It's period one, and we're doing all the work that teachers have set that didn't get done in the lesson. So they're now doing that in the morning. But now they've all got equal access to great tech. But at home, they don't have equal access to great tech, which of course is a digital divide. But the other problem is that you've got a divide in terms of opportunity. I mean, why is it people with money at home? Why are those kids doing rather better than those without money at home? Well, it's because they don't have access to lots of things. They don't have access to the tech, and that's becoming increasingly important. They don't have access to private tutors, many of whom are online these days. You know, the days of your teacher from school turning up at your dining room table, those days are quickly behind us. They're going away because we can do what we're doing here. We can just hop on Zoom. So, but you have to pay money for that, £40 an hour, £50 an hour. Not everybody's got 40 or £50 an hour. And when the tech is at school, and I keep saying it, the tech is in the school. Use it. Put it there, get the kids in there period 1 or 2 doing that work at home. My business is great for those kids who found during the pandemic that actually the school environment isn't working for them. So they come along to our online schools, and it is transformational for those kids because they've spent a horrible time at school. Many of them are being bullied. Many of them have got individual needs. Many of them are really talented, but find that the school system actually doesn't like them very much because of it. The rest, the 2/3 of kids who are not academic, they bully them. They don't like the idea that that kid's always got their hand up, always knows the answer, and that they don't. So there's a lot of bullying that goes in the school. And what that means is the kids stops putting their hand up, they stop engaging, they start getting upset, they don't go into school. They join our schools. We're selecting that student. So everybody's putting their hand up. It's phenomenal. They're racing ahead. They're doing incredibly well. And our kids are going off to Oxford, Cambridge, doing everything, going everywhere, Ivy League. You know, it's a game changer for those kids. So if you've got a really talented academically talented kid who's struggling at school, it might be that online's right for you, and then come to Cambridge Online Education. We can certainly have that conversation. But for most children, and they're the ones, my heart's there. You know, I grew up on a council estate. I didn't have a lot of money. You know, I came through the school system wondering why, you know, what was all that about? I literally ran out of school. I couldn't wait to get out of school. The idea that I'd become a teacher and spend decades in classrooms after running out of the school is amazing. Um, but yeah, I mean, there it is. It didn't work for me. It made me feel sick. I put in some work when I was doing my doctorate, some reflexive work. And in that reflexive work, I was examining why I was doing the doctorate because it was a mystery to me. Why am I doing doctorate in education when I hated school? Absolutely hated school. Couldn't see the point of it. Um, and what did I get from school? And then when I got to the what did I get from school is I had to say it. What I got from school was the knowledge that I was stupid. I mean, I'm not sure that's really the project, is it? Is that the project? Is that
No,
what
it
we get
definitely
from
isn't.
schools?
And it did seem like your experiences have led to a great deal of motivation to change things. And is that be the change you want to see in the world?
Yes.
For anyone interested, check out online. You've got all those resources. We'll put some links in the show notes as well. And that is Dr. Troy Page. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset with Share Radio. See you again soon for more.